folks, welcome back to Indaba Africa. This is Chris once again. Hello, folks, and welcome back once again to Chris Wyatt Reports here on the Indaba Africa channel, Chris Wyatt Africa Network. Wow, long time no see. Let's see, went off the air about 45 minutes ago with Senator Doug Mastriano, gubernatorial candidate here in the state of Pennsylvania, which, of course, is Penn's Forest. My special guest today has become a regular on the program frequently, although I'm not on his program very often. We're going to have to talk about that. But has become a regular on the program, none other than AfriForum's, now AfriForum, but, of course, known to us for a long time as the Conscious Caracal. It is Ernst van Zyl. Ernst, hoe gaan dit?
Hello Chris, nee, het gaan baie goed, dankie. And yeah, thank you very much for having me on again. I will invite you back on the channel as well. I just need to work in an episode where we talk about something that's your field of expertise specifically, and that is, well, Africa broadly. We've had that type of conversation before on my channel. I want to maybe have a follow-up there, or if there's maybe a analysis on the midterms in the US that's coming up this year as well. But don't worry, I'm going to fit you in. But yeah, thanks very much for having me on again. I really appreciate it, and I also enjoy your audience and what they have to say and all their questions. It's always very nice to read. I get a little bit distracted sometimes with your own live chat, but I'm going to try and not look at it too much.
No, that's all right. We owe it to the audience. I mean, that's one reason why people watch this, over, prepared videos. It's interesting if you look at the data about what people watch, and YouTube's data. I've been looking at it now. People will watch like my shorts, like the entire thing, because they're short. You keep them for a minute. Although I do better than the average short producer. A lot of short producers do a minute and they lose people after about 15 seconds, but they watch it. But the live streams, it's fascinating. I've told people, content creators, if you have a live stream that goes for over an hour and you have viewer retention of 15 minutes, that's success. Because you got to bear in mind, hundreds of people pop in for a second, they'll watch a few seconds of it and they go out. So if you have somebody that watches it for an hour and somebody watches it for 30 seconds, then your rate is 30 minutes, and you got to figure it that way. But it is interesting to see what people will watch, and so I think we kind of owe it to the audience when the chat's here if we can to get to it. But today we've got you in here, and you and I talked. You have a recent publication for AfriForum, and the hashtag The World Must Know. Now, this is where the senior moment might come in, Ernst. I don't remember if I invented the hashtag or if AfriForum invented the hashtag. I say that because I was telling people that the world must know, and I started saying hashtag the world must know about rural insecurity and violence in South Africa a few years ago. And then AfriForum came out with this. So maybe they came out with it. Maybe I heard it and I stole it. I don't know, but I don't recall. But if people watch my program in 2020 and 2020, you would have heard me say every time that something horrific was going on, I would say the world must know, and we got to let the world know about it. That's the reason for my channel. So I won't try to take credit for it, although I'm not sure who had the original. But AfriForum has this hashtag the world must know. So tell us about that, or maybe the hashtag, if you recall, where it came about, because you weren't with AfriForum when that came out, as I recall. You joined them since.
Yeah, so the first The World Must Know report came out in early 2020, and I was with AfriForum at the time already. Okay. I started working there in 2019, and then for our tour to the US in 2020, we worked on the first report. And the first report was written by a few of my colleagues, and me included. I was one of the co-authors of it. And then in 2022, at the beginning of this year, I just thought, well, it's been 2 years now since that first report was released. Maybe we should write a second one, a follow-up, because so much has happened in the past 2 years. And when we do another international tour, we can't take a report with us that is old information from 2 years ago. We need something updated. So I took the initiative to start writing this new follow-up report, The World Must Know, so the first one was about the persecution of minority communities in South Africa, and this new one is the continued persecution of minority communities in South Africa, specifically focusing on that 2-year period between 2020 and 2022, and also with a particular focus on the COVID-related stuff.
Well, you say oppression, but really it's also suppression, and we'll get to that when we talk about the Afrikaans language in particular, but it's not exclusively that. But suppression is also what's going on here. Now, I think it's important for those who read it. I've read the entire report. It's 19 pages, a very lucid, easy read, a disturbing read, but an easy read. And I see that one of the reasons that it's important, you guys felt, is that people need to remember that in March of 2020, international travel went out the window. And so your efforts to garner support and make the world aware of this around the world world were hampered by the fact you couldn't go anywhere. The only way you could talk to people was Zoom or Teams or, you know, all those different ways that people are doing it, WebEx. So that obviously was a driving factor too, is why it's the need for a new report, because you haven't been able as AfriForum to go around the world to talk to people. And so now, is that an opportunity that's coming open again, except for maybe, you know, New Zealand, Australia? You know, can't go there.
Well, at the moment, Chris, we are still working on what the next tour is going to be. I can't really tell you. We don't have it booked yet, and we don't know exactly where yet. But we're definitely going to do either this year or next year. There will be another liaison tour internationally. We're still figuring out where and when. When it comes to what you just said there, another important reason why we needed to have follow-up reports, and the first report also served this purpose largely, was the fact that all these stories kind of get lost in the news, in the white noise of the news cycle in the background. I mean, you get these stories, and then just as before you could even digest the first story, the next story hits. And a lot of people forget a lot about these stories. But when, as I did with this report, when you put them all into one place, the picture starts forming, and you actually get a very disturbing picture of what's really going on. And that was what I try to achieve here, and I'm glad that you found it an easy read, because that's what I wanted to do. I didn't want to make it a heavy report that people see as daunting and they can't really digest it. Wanted to make it an easy one that they can read on their own, and all the sources are there, and it's easy to understand, it's engaging, and that people get the bigger picture. And it's also it is for specifically an international audience, but for people domestically in South Africa as well. It can be used as a source, and also as just a source of perspective when it comes to these stories, that you can actually see, well, here is the entire list of all the racially discriminatory legislation of the past 2 years. Here's all the incidents of high-profile hate speech against minorities in South Africa in the past 2 years. So everything of that is there, and it's all sourced. So nothing there you can say is, I'm just claiming this, because everything there, don't just believe what I say, go research what I say. It's there. Like every claim, every thing that is documented in that report has a footnote corresponding to the source where we found it.
Well, one of the things I found particularly engaging and interesting about it is, of course, I did watch the. Listen, if it wasn't for the fact that the sentiment behind it, the racist-driven mindset behind the testimony of Julius Malema in his trial, if it wasn't for that, it would just been pure comedy. I mean, you would have thought this was a Monty Python skit listening to this guy talk. And the way that you have drafted and written that section for the trial of Julius Malema for his Kill the Boer hate speech, or whatever they want to call it, that section is particularly poignant in the way that you've brought in his statements and answering questions, and when he was questioned by advocate Mark Oppenheimer and his responses to it. You know, if people want to go watch it, that's great. Go watch it. AfriForum has the videos on YouTube and other places. You can go watch them. But it's lengthy. It's a long thing. It went on for several days. You've done a very good job of summarizing in a very short period the key statements, and in the chronological sequence that they were asked and answered, with verbatim quotes from Julius Malema. And I think that is, you know, if we turn this around, and if this was a white American Republican candidate for office, or a member of the House of Representatives who said any of the vile things that he said in that trial, that American would be living in Tahiti in you know, hiding out, just hidden. They wouldn't be found. You couldn't find that person. It's shocking that a person can say such vile, hateful things and you know, essentially calls to violence, and the public isn't shocked. So I think you've done a public service in synopsizing and condensing that. I imagine that was a time-consuming portion, that segment of the paper.
Well, Chris, what I wanted to achieve there is exactly that, is to just create that source, because the South African mainstream media were unfortunately very lacking when it came to the reporting of that very important case of AfriForum versus the EFF. So, for example, the media focused on stories like making the headline, Julius Malema tells court he will be president one day, or AfriForum's advocate Oppenheimer looks like Jan van Riebeeck. Like, these aren't the real stories. These are like tabloid stories.
They're not even stories.
Yeah,
they're tweets. They're tweets. Exactly. You owe me a beer.
Yeah, exactly. And I was looking for actual journalists looking at this court case and highlighting the real disturbing things, and I couldn't find it. There was, I think, a single story in the mainstream media, and it was on the South African. That publication that made the headline on their website about Julius Malema refusing to rule out that he can't promise under oath that he will never call for the slaughtering of white people. But the thing is, when it comes to this court case, I know it inside out because I was there. I attended the court case, and then afterwards I went and rewatched the entire thing to make sure that I get all the quotes perfectly right, because I can't just put all these heinous quotes in there and people say, oh, that can't be real, and then they go check and then the quote isn't real. Then my credibility is shot. So I had to make sure everything is perfectly there as he said it, and in context, and linking back to, like you said, with the timestamp. So even if there is something in the report that you read that Julius Malema said in the court case and you're like, no, that can't be real, the timestamp is there and there's a link to the video. You can go check it out and see for yourself, listen to the entire 4-hour context if you really wanted to. So there's nothing I'm hiding, there's nothing to hide. Everything is there in full transparency.
Well, someone just thanked you in the chat with Sideliner Opinions. I think it said, thank you for placing all these facts on record, Ernst, for future generations to study where South Africa's wheels came off. There's something, and let me get your take on this. There's something cathartic about writing something for the record and setting the facts straight and laying it out there. About, 4 or 5 years ago now, I wrote an article on, it may have been 2017, I think, on LinkedIn, when I was thinking it might be a publishing platform. It never really worked out that way, called Land and Poverty in South Africa, in which I laid out the truth about land and land expropriation, who acquired land, who owns land, all that stuff, and used the government's own land survey to show the stats and figures about, that sort of thing, and set it aside. And also raised pertinent questions about, who wants land, who should have land, and all those questions. And then not just that, but offered solutions. It's kind of cathartic to do that sort of thing, that sets something for the record, and also, to have ideas. Right. Now, your paper isn't about suggestions, other than I'm sure the main suggestions: stop racist legislation, stop suppressing minorities. But did you get that same sense of a cathartic release that you've documented this, it's for the record, it's out there now?
Yeah, well, Chris, exactly. For me, it was firstly about getting, like I said earlier, getting all of this in one place, because I completely understand the average person, the regular person that's working, that's taking care of a family, that's all these responsibilities. They can't scour the news constantly. They can't go check up all these things. That person, if they were to take an interest in the topic of, for example, let's take just a hypothetical example. If there was a person that was talking to a family member, they're having a debate with a family member about the trial of Julius Malema. And they're like, no, he said this. And the family member's like, no, it couldn't have been. It's like, well, here, it's documented. So I created a source that people can use. So that person doesn't have to go to the trial recording and go watch a 4-hour, just one day being like 4 hours, go through the entire 4 hours to look for that one quote or that clip as proof. He can just go to my report and you can use my report and say, well, there it is. There's all the proof you need. But that hypothetical is just a way to demonstrate how it can be used. And the exact same thing can happen for people that just want perspective. So let's say you're a working person, you don't have time to just go in depth into the racially discriminatory laws of South Africa. You can just go read the section in this report and the previous one on the racially discriminatory laws in South Africa. It'll take you 10 minutes. No, not even 10 minutes, just for that section. It'll take you 5 minutes per report if you just read the section in both reports on racially discriminatory legislation in South Africa. And then you have a pretty good picture. You can cite dozens of examples. You know what the timeline is for the past 30 years, and you can pretty much hold your own in any debate. You don't even have to be an expert in the field. If you just go read this condensed version of the history of these and the record of all these policies, then you can pretty much be with confidence go and talk to people about them. So that's what I wanted to do for each of these topics, not just Julius Malema's trial, but also racially discriminatory legislation, what happened at Caracal, expropriation without compensation, that's another important one. Where do we stand now? What happened in the past 2 years? I try to document that as well as I can as well, and that's what every one of these sections was about, was to give just the average guy that has an interest in this or wants a source for these types of topics to be to have it easily accessible for them, and everything is there. Even if they want to do a deep dive, they can go read all of those sources that I link in the footnotes, and they can really get a thorough picture of any one of the topics that I discuss there.
Well, in the first section you've got there, you talk about racially discriminatory laws in the times of Rona. And this is something that I was all over nailing from the very outset, talking about as well.
I'm very much aware.
Oh, yeah, you're very much aware. But there's some new viewers here that may not be aware. So, the argument from the tourism minister was that this is in compliance with BEE. Well, past laws were legal. The Native Lands Act of 1913 was legal. Because something's legal doesn't make it moral, just, or right. And isn't it ironic, the very people who screamed about the illegitimacy and how unfair and bigoted and racist apartheid-era laws were, find exactly no problem with the same sort of legislation that does the exact same thing. And what I find horrific is that it's one thing for a minority to somehow oppress the majority. It's actually, kind of impressive. I'm not in a good way, but impressive that a minority can oppress a majority. We've seen it in Sparta, where the ruling class oppressed, the rest of the population. We saw it under apartheid. But it is morally reprehensible for a majority to suppress a minority who has no weight or influence. So, this thing about it's legal and it's okay, I found that disturbing at the time, and I still do. What about yourself?
Yeah, Chris, well, that's an ongoing debate in South Africa, and it shouldn't be, but the racially discriminatory laws are wrong in principle. I mean, I feel like I'm going insane when I try to do a debate where I go on ENCA or I go on any of these panel debates, and I come up against someone there that's like, yeah, it's fine if we do it. I'm like, no, it's not. The whole principle, it's wrong in principle. You can't just say it's fine when we do it. It's wrong when we're the victims. That's not morally sound. That's not principally sound. That just makes you a hypocrite. It just makes you a principally rotten person. And the thing is, if it's not wrong in principle, then you can't really complain. Then you can't really complain if it goes the other way. Then you can't really make a case when it goes the other way, because you condoned it in the first place. So it's the strangest thing for me. For me, it's racially discriminatory laws are wrong in principle, no matter who the victims are. I mean, call me controversial, but that should be the norm. That should be the way you look at this issue. It shouldn't be a controversial thing to say, but it is, unfortunately, in South Africa. And if you look at, for example, some of these cases that I mentioned in the report, it's really reprehensible stuff. I mean, the two that stand out to me that really I wanted to get in depth, because this needed to be on the record, was firstly the one that you also covered very in depth, and that was the Tourism Relief Fund. Heinous piece of legislation where all these small businesses are suffering under I don't want to say under COVID, because they're suffering under the lockdowns. That's actually what's going on. Correct. And all these businesses are on the brink or are going out of business. And then the government says, oh, we're going to help you. And thank you. That's such a big relief. Thank you so much. And then the government's like, oh, but you're too white. Sorry, you can just sink. And all these little family businesses just go under because they're too white. I mean, it's morally reprehensible. The other, and I mean, luckily enough, AfriForum was able to get that piece of legislation declared unconstitutional and unlawful. So that didn't see the light of day. But
initially, the North Gauteng High Court said it was legitimate.
Yes. Yeah,
shocking.
And that entire process is documented there in the reports. Of firstly, it was fine. Then we took it on appeal, and we got a successful appeal. But yeah, for the sake of brevity, I just shortened it there. And then the other heinous example, I mean, this one's even worse, is what happened to the Tears Foundation. I mean, this is an organization that fights gender-based violence in South Africa, and they applied for funding, and then the government was just like, no, you're too white. Sorry, we can't give you any money to help fight gender-based violence. Our racial agenda is too important, you understand? I mean,
And every time that they have a mission failure, the ANC trots out gender-based violence. Cyril Ramaphosa's go-to is to talk about gender-based violence every time that, Pala Pala or something like that comes up. It's gender-based violence day. It's really reprehensible.
Right. But the thing is, now you have these types of cases that I mentioned in this report. If you were to, let's say, if you were to use them in a dystopian novel in the previous century, or even if you just were to go back in time a few decades and you write a dystopian novel of what's happening with some of these legislation, that
could never happen. That's
too
far-fetched.
You can't have a government where an organization of volunteers that fight gender-based violence goes to the government for funding, that the government is offering funding to anyone that wants any organization that's fighting gender-based violence, and they're like, oh, you're too white, sorry. Your entire cause is just going to be sidelined now. It's really horrible stuff. But then still, I mean, this pool of people is shrinking, and I can see it shrinking. But there's still a few people out there that still justify this type of racial discrimination. They say, no, it's going to rectify the past. No, it's not. All you're doing is you're digging a new pothole to fill an old one, and you're not even filling an old one. You're just serving the politically connected elite. And you're just serving people that know the right people.
Not just that, they're also stoking racial discord and hatred.
Right.
I mean, when you suppress a person's culture, what do you expect the response to be? Okay, fine, thank you. Here, I'll take my fanny cake and go. No, this is just horrific stuff. Let me ask you this question. Writing this, of course, you're very familiar with all this material because you lived it, you worked it, you've fought these things. Was there anything new that you learned in writing this, or maybe something you might have overlooked? You realized, oh, that's really important. I should include that somewhere in the report. Anything like that come up?
Well, actually, quite a few.
Quite a few. That's interesting.
Just the extent of many of these issues. So let's take them one by one. So when it comes to, for example, the racially discriminatory laws, I was pretty much aware of all of them because most of these cases, AfriForum is fighting them in some capacity. But seeing them all in one place really just, again, put it in perspective how evil this government is when it comes to racially discriminatory policies. When it comes to expropriation without compensation, this is my field of expertise. I mean, I did my master's degree on expropriation without compensation in Zimbabwe, and also on private property rights and expropriation of without compensation in Venezuela. So within AfriForum, this is I'm the go-to guy when it comes to expropriation without compensation. So here I didn't really learn anything new. It was just a nice exercise to put it simply, rather than a long list of everything, all the technicalities. I had to challenge myself to put it as simply as possible so anyone can follow along and easily understand and get an instant picture on where we stand now. When it comes to the riots, unrest, and looting during July 2021, that section I focused on the minorities being targeted rhetorically. Didn't really learn something new there. For me, there it was just seeing where it was documented, because I remember seeing the rhetoric on social media, the anti-minority rhetoric specifically directed at the Indian community in South Africa, some heinous stuff, and I was able to find it documented in quite a few places, so that was good. When it comes to the Kill the Boer case, there also I didn't learn too much new thing because I was there the whole time. Targeting minority heritage, there I learned a lot. I was not aware of many of the ways that minority heritage had been targeted and what statues had been damaged in the past 2 years. There I learned quite a few new things. And then also the decline of Afrikaans rights and education, Afrikaans language rights. That section I also learned a lot, because I was not aware of the extent of just how Afrikaans was being targeted at our universities. I mean, to the point where many students were being prohibited from speaking Afrikaans, even in private, in residences. I uncovered some shocking stuff there that shocked even me.
Well, I think the biggest, many of us know about the UNISA case when it occurred up in 2017 and shocked that it took as long as it did to have that declared unconstitutional, which is really sad because UNISA is a global distance education school. In fact, I nearly enrolled in it back in the 1980s, University of South Africa we're talking about. But Stellenbosch, that's the one that's shocking. The land that Stellenbosch resides upon was donated under the premise that Afrikaans would be the medium of instruction into perpetuity there. That was the basis for the land. So quite frankly, Stellenbosch University, you want to talk expropriation? We expropriate Stellenbosch University's land and take it away from them, because the suppression of Afrikaans in the Western Cape, where over 2/3 of the population's first language is Afrikaans, and the suppression of place where the land was only given in perpetuity so that would be taught. A world-class institution with a global reputation, and it was an Afrikaans language. And it's just, actually outrageous, the stuff I saw in your report. Some of it I heard about anecdotally. It's nice to have something for the record rather than trying to find an old newspaper claim or this, that, and the other, about just, how students, on park benches being harassed, and in WhatsApp being attacked on campus, and you're not being allowed to talk about in dormitories. This is ridiculous. South Africa is a signatory to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Now, it's not a binding document, but it's an aspirational document. Not only that, but Afrikaans is an official language of South Africa, one of 11. I guess soon it'll be 12 with South African Sign Language, an unwritten, unspoken language. But anyway, that'll be number 12. But this oppression is unconstitutional, and it's vile. And also, the false attribution of Afrikaans to all the things that the progressives think is evil is sickening. It's a language born of Africa with 7 major contributions coming to it from indigenous languages. And it's the only language that I'm aware of that has major parts of it from multiple continents. Europe, Africa, and Asia all contributed to Afrikaans. It's really reprehensible.
And Chris, the other thing that's also that I touch on in my report is just the ANC's outright refusal to admit that Afrikaans is an indigenous language.
Yeah.
They fought against that for a long while. Luckily, there was a victory there against the ANC where they had to admit it was an indigenous language, but after kicking their heels into the ground. It's really, when it comes to the treatment of many of these students on campuses, it's vile, it's horrible. And when it comes to something like the Afrikaans is an indigenous language, I always ask the question when someone says it's not an indigenous language. And I say, okay, where is it indigenous to then? Where do people, and it just breaks.
The Netherlands, it's Dutch. No, it's not.
Nobody in the Netherlands speaks Afrikaans,
and a lot of them can't. A lot of them can't understand it. Many Dutch can't understand Afrikaans, but many of them are lost. You start speaking Afrikaans, they're like, yeah, they're really lost. No, it's another thing you talk about here in this as well, is you talk about the monuments, and I think that's a great service you've done too, because some of us know about the monuments, but of course I heard about the reprehensible theft of the statue of Koos de la Rey from his gravesite. I mean, that's just absolutely sick and twisted. I mean, first off, Koos de la Rey has nothing to do with apartheid. He had nothing to do with any of this stuff. He was a Boer leader in multiple conflicts, but in the Second Boer War, and he held out for a long time, of course, known by the nickname De Leon van de West-Transvaal. He was actually not involved in any of this nonsense that these people have such hatred for. Now, the thing that's really sad about this is the people that attack the memory of people like Paul Kruger and Pete Retief and just run through all the list.
Louis Botha.
Louis Botha, that's another statue. And go after Koos de la Rey. Please cite for me, give me an example of what oppression that you're talking about. In the case of Koos de la Rey, I'm not aware of him ever oppressing anybody. He fought for freedom, and not just for Trekboers and Afrikaners. They weren't called Afrikaners then, but, Trekboers. Not just for them, but also for the Tswana-speaking peoples in the region he came from. It's just really sad and pathetic that people they're really just racist. They're bigots. They look at skin pigmentation and form conclusions without any knowledge or information.
Yeah, Chris, and that's exactly, it comes back to why I wanted to do this report. It's again to put it all there, just to put it in writing, to document all this, to chronicle all this vile stuff that's happening in South Africa in the past 2 years. Because believe it or not, I'm speaking rhetorically because I know you do believe it, but there's a lot of people that deny many of the things that I document in this report are even happening. There's Julius Malema standing in Senegal saying there's no murdering of white farmers in South Africa. Now, he was not the first person to say that. Everyone's like, oh, that's very evil. How could he say that? I can't believe someone would say that. Well, he took that from Cyril Ramaphosa. Cyril Ramaphosa was the first guy to say exactly that.
Bloomberg at New York at the UN summit, he lied, and that's on record. How quickly people forget.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's why I wanted to, that's why you need this type of documentation. Just remind people, put it there. It's like, and here's the source, here it's from. Nobody can deny this. So if anyone, any of the topics that I mentioned in this report and any of those instances or incidents, if any of it, if you ever encounter someone that denies any of it that happens, you can find the sources are there in the report, so you can put them in their place and show them that they just, they fallen for propaganda or they're spreading propaganda. And that's, I'm glad to see I'm not the only one doing this type of documenting of things going on. Another person that does this much better than me, it's James Myberg of Politics Web. He does exceptional work on this. I mean, his article, the many race laws of South Africa, is incredible resource. But I wanted to do something similar where it's just there, so that you don't, the readers of this report don't have to go dig for half an hour to get the piece of evidence they need to put a liar in their place. They can just go for 5 seconds, go Control F, find it, and put someone in their place with the evidence. And like I said, everything is there. So, and I want to create more sources like this to empower people to be able to win debates very easily, and to have all the facts there, even though, I mean, a lot of people know these facts to be true, but they often can't remember exactly where the source was, can't remember exactly where they read about it. So now here is many of this documented, so you can easily find the sources. So nobody can come to you and say, do you have a source for that? I'm like, yeah, I've got 10 sources. Where can we begin? How much time do you have?
Well, you know, I think what we really should do is make a satire film and just flip the script. I could play the role of Horace Zamamona, the president of South Africa. And I could state things like, you know, there is no murder of people in the townships. It doesn't happen. You know, you just, you know, do a spoof and flip the script around completely and watch that thing get people freaking out over that. They probably shut people down. It's just crazy. So on the targeting of minority heritage, which you've talked about in that section of the paper, you talk about, of course, the renaming campaign. And then you mentioned briefly the Tal Monument, which is in Paarl. And this is a monument, the only monument on the planet to a language. And this is to Afrikaans. It's a weird but a fantastic monument. Actually, I've been there, and I'll be back there again this September to take another look at it when I meet people in Paarl. But on the renaming campaign, what I found egregious about this is that it's not as if it's a question of there was a settlement like Ulundi, where the Zulu lived, and European descended South Africans came in and said, nope, it's not Ulundi. Now it's Wyattville. Oh, you know, and we're not restoring something. You know, in the case of Nelspruit.
Well, just to stop you there, Chris, if it was Afrikaners naming it, they'd call it Vietberg.
Yeah, Vietbag. There you go, Vietbag. They would start using that Vietbag. So yeah, it's right next to Orania. Vietbag. Thank you. That's very good. Vietbag. So yeah, we didn't rename Ulundi Vietbag, or no one did that. You know, in the case of Nelspruit, it's especially annoying because there was no human settlement on a permanent basis where Nelspruit sprung up in the 19th century. It was founded by trekboers, and people settled there as a transportation hub, and that's where it grew from. So why are you renaming it Mbombela? Where does that come from? You know, and Pretoria was named after Andreas Pretorius. And there was no permanent settlement there, despite the fairy tales about Shwane, the mystical chief that never existed. Even if he did exist, he didn't live there. He didn't set up a city or a dwelling. So it's one thing to expropriate names and then restore them to their former glory or former name because something's been renamed inappropriately. But they're simply stealing names of places established by other people. This is vile and in my view, horrific.
Just a little bit of context, or a little bit of trivia there for you, Chris. When you were listing all these names of places in South Africa, the town called Nylstroom, I don't know if you've heard about it. It's named after, it was named by voortrekkers that came there, and they thought the river that they came to was the Nile River. And then they named it the Nylstroom. No, they were absolutely certain that they trekked so far north that they had ended up in Egypt. Because remember, they didn't have maps. They didn't really have a sense of perspective where they were on the continent. They're just going north. They just know they're going straight. So, and then they ended up there, and they, and then they thought, yeah, we've reached the. I think if I remember the story correctly, there's three or four hills there that almost look like pyramids as well. And like, well, this must be it. This must be the ruins, yeah. But yeah, no, that's there's a lot written about it. So your listeners, if that's is an interesting little piece of trivia, they can go read up on it. It's a fascinating story.
Well, I mean, let's be honest and fair and balanced here. I mean, there were some wildly inappropriate names in my view. There was a town in South Africa began with a K, you know, a prohibited language word in South African, K-dorp, you know, and that's inappropriate. That was wrong. However you view that word, even though it's not Afrikaans, it's Arabic in origin and it means unbeliever. But the point is that, I mean, that's uncalled for, and that was renamed. I don't have an issue with that, but you know, no one. I guess they've renamed Zeros now. I didn't know that because they're calling it the different town or the municipalities something else. But Zeros is named after Coetzee's rest. That's what it is. This was rest point. As they were traveling on the Doorstrek, you know, they stopped there in their way into Botswana, and which was probably not the brightest trek bore move, trying to get through the Kalahari in the middle of summertime. But you know, it's this renaming campaign is really irritating and frustrating to say the least. Again, I go back to the point: if someone had something there, it was the name was taken away and renamed. That's a different story. But these are settlements that didn't exist, that were created by people, and it's simply being stolen from them.
Yeah, I mean, one of the examples that I mentioned there in the report was let me just get here, because I got a whole list here of all the names that I used there, and one of them was firstly the town of Kraddock. I mean, this is a historic town in the Karoo. It's an iconic town, and now it's being changed to, I think, Nguba. I think that's how you say it.
Yep.
Or Kaladokwe, I think, is the other option. And then there's also the renaming of East London to Gompo, and also that's being considered. And then naturally, I think a lot of people are aware of Port Elizabeth being Queberga. And then, yeah, there's a long list of these towns that are going to be renamed. But it's funny because the ANC aren't building anything new. They're not building new towns, because if you build something, you can name it. That's how it works. I mean, you can't just rename things and then claim it as your own. It's like, this is our creation. This is the ANC's, a monument to the ANC. But to add to that point, I think there's a theory that we need to look into. I think there might be we need to get the top sangomas in South Africa into this to do an investigation. That is the curse of the renaming, because every place that's being renamed by the ANC seems to be cursed just a few months later. I mean, look at Queberga now, going into day 0. The taps running dry there just a few months after it was renamed. Suspicious stuff. And I mean, this is not an isolated incident. Maybe we should get a crack team of the biggest mystical minds in South Africa to investigate this curse, because I'm convinced there's an ANC curse where wherever they rename a place, it just turns into ruin, or it's cursed with some type of plague.
Well, I can help you in that quest. You see, I'm a certified Sangoma. Toss the bones. There we go. So no offense to Sangomas. That's a reference to the National Coronavirus Command Council, which relied on scientific evidence for its smoking ban and all its other capricious decisions. Yeah, right. Anyway, nonsense. So yeah, the suppression of the culture really bad. Now, another piece of this section you've talked about here was, and you've touched on it previously, but let's get a little more in depth on it. This was what happened during the internal ANC insurrection, which I call it and have called it since the 9th of July last year, and even said it was likely to be one after the 29 June decision that Jacob Zuma was contempt of court by the Constitutional Court, which apparently the intelligence services and security and the state apparatus had no idea about and couldn't prepare for. But you talk about the demonization of Indian South Africans, 1.3 million strong. By the way, about 300,000 there, 187, 200,000 of them first language is Afrikaans, for those who don't know that, Indians, their first language Afrikaans. But 1.3 million strong, and they've been demonized, and an entire people painted as if they're murderers and killers over a fraudulent narrative over what happened in Phoenix, a suburb of Durban. This is pretty sad, isn't it?
Yeah, no. When it comes to that story, it's one of the underreported.
Ernst, sorry, I'm getting a call. I've got to take from Minnesota. Well, I'm going to let you talk for a couple minutes, okay?
Yeah, sure, no problem. It's now the Ernst van Zyl show while Chris is away. So when it comes to that section of the report, I went into an aspect of the riots here in South Africa in 2021 in July that wasn't really covered in the mainstream media that much as it should have been, and that is the just demonization of minority communities in South Africa, in specifically in KwaZulu-Natal, but then also in other major cities. And the prevailing narrative was that many of these because of the failing of the South African police force to defend many of these businesses and neighborhoods, many of these citizens took it up themselves to defend their neighborhoods and their communities. And then what happened was many of these citizens simply defending their communities were maligned and smeared as racists, as extremists, as killers, as murderers. It's horrible stuff. It's really and nobody in the media really called it out and said, hey, this is not okay. This is something that definitely should not be condoned and something that definitely should not be justified. But yeah, that's why I wanted to document that in the report as well, is to again give that side of the story, because it was so underreported. And it was actually some of the sources that I used, some publications in India that were covering it, talking about how Indians were being harassed on social media and smeared and called murderers and racists. The EFF took up that line that all Indians are racist. I just wanted to put that on record. And I see Nick Miller asked, Ernst, hello, can you see the chat? Yes, I can see the chat.
That came up earlier. He said something about, someone said the chat's not there. The chat is there. I can see the chat. So I'm not sure what's going on with that. People saying the chat's not
there. Chris, you came back just in time. I just covered the basic rationale behind that section, and also just to maybe repeat very briefly, it was just to give coverage and documentation to a side of the riots that wasn't really covered in the mainstream media. They weren't talking about the just absolute unbased in reality demonization of an entire racial group, an entire minority community, and the demonization and attacking of citizens for only defending their neighborhoods because the police weren't able to.
No, absolutely. And that's what's forgotten about this. The police were unprepared, unrehearsed, unarmed, uncoordinated, and any idiot could see this coming from a mile away. Maybe not the scale of it, but certainly the fact that there was going to be unrest. And instead of going and arresting Jacob Zuma, they allowed him to turn himself in after his deadline of July 4th, and then after the deadline for Bekachile and for the police commissioner to do it by July 8th. Both of those eclipsed. All of those people are in contempt of court. Bekachile should have been sacked and charged with a crime for being in contempt of court, but he's never been even addressed on that. He finally turned himself in after midnight when it became the 9th. And that's when all this stuff started. They attacked the Mooi River toll plaza, burning 100 semi-trucks, all of which were owned by black South Africans and BEE companies. That's the irony of it. No, it's and what happened here, this attack on communities, people had to defend themselves. There was no police there. Looting, murders, theft, everything was going on, and people had to do something to protect themselves, and they did. And, I don't encourage vigilantism, but I wouldn't call self-defense vigilantism. Vigilantism is going and hunting people down. If you defend your neighborhoods, that's your right. That is your right to defend your neighborhood. That's really sad. And the way it's been blown out of proportion, I've seen a lot of people cover it, but the most coverage I've seen it talk about has been my channel, Caro Charu, and then also Big Daddy Liberty at Sia in Kabisi have also covered this extensively. I don't know if you've covered it, but the demonization of the Indian community, it's sick, it's racist by its very nature, and it is caustic to community relations. As Caro Charu has said on repeated occasions, the Indian communities and black communities where we're talking about in Phoenix lived in peace and harmony, by and large, before the July uprisings, or whatever you want to call it. And they've gone back, by and large, living together. But the press keeps wanting to go in and claim there's tension and this, that, and the other. It's really sad what's happened here, and how people can be so easily colored by their inability to divorce themselves from their ethnic origins and look at things objectively.
Yeah, Chris, and that's why I wanted to put it on record again. Like I keep repeating, to just so that people know that this happened. I mean, it sounds so strange to say, but I'm doing some journalisming I'm doing some work that the journalists should have been doing. I'm doing their work for them. I'm reporting on reality, and I'm creating a public record of the events that happened, and I'm reporting on specifically the side of the word that they like to use, the marginalized groups in this country. I'm giving a voice and not representation, but representation in the media for the stories of people that need to hear their stories heard. I mean, like I said earlier, I was seeing all of this hateful rhetoric towards not just the Indian minority, but also the white minority in South Africa during those riots online. And I just didn't see any righteous indignation against it in the mainstream media. Nobody was saying this is unacceptable. Nobody was saying this is horrible stuff. We can't condone this. We can't support this. This needs to be called out. They were all focusing on actually trying to blow the flames, trying to make it worse by focusing on narratives like, yeah, this is the result of all this inequality created by white people greedily hoarding all the resources and land for themselves. All these bizarre false narratives. They were basically fanning the flames. That was what the commentariat in this country were doing, rather than calling out the actual violent and hateful rhetoric towards their countrymen. They were actually just fanning the flames and saying, yes, let the anger flow through you. It's a good thing. And it was horrible to see. It really makes you sick.
And the other piece of this too is that the fourth estate, which of course is a French expression for the media, the fourth estate, one of its charges, its responsibilities is to inform the public objectively. Yeah, right. Objectively inform the public with the facts and the stories. And number two, it's to hold the government accountable. Because the average person on the street doesn't have the resources to hunt down, investigate, to file court cases, to access documents. So that's not something the average person has the ability to do. Maybe researchers can do it, that sort of thing.
And even if they had the ability, they don't have the time.
Exactly. They've got to live a life. So the press's responsibility is to hold the state accountable, whether it's here or it's in Moscow or it's in Pretoria. And they're not only not holding the government accountable, they're looking the other way. Where are the endless stories today? It has been 1 year plus. By the way, I didn't see anybody. If anyone else did, then you feel free to correct me. I saw nobody marking the date when the insurrection began. On the 8th of July, I did a live stream broadcast in which I had people, you weren't available, so you weren't able to come on, in which I had people come on and we talked about the events that occurred the year prior. I've seen no discussion. I've been 1 or 2 articles in the Daily Maverick about it's been a year, that sort of thing. But no one is saying, a year later, who in the police has been investigated, who in the military intelligence, who in the cabinet, who in the parliament, who is responsible for public safety, who failed, the police commissioner. Not one person investigated or charged with anything. Never mind the fact that the people actually instigated this stuff. What about the Zuma's kids, Dudu Dunderhead or whatever his name is, encouraging people to loot and burn things. These are incitement to violence. These are crimes. Nobody has been held to account for billions of dollars of damage and irreparable harm to South Africa's reputation and its investment future.
Well, Chris, they've been. It always sounds so funny when I repeat the government's rhetoric, but I mean they've had the names of all these instigators, all the masterminds. They don't worry, the Bekechele has got them on a list. But it's a year later.
The cat in the hat.
And it's been a year later and there's no accountability. It's the same with when Ramaphosa last night, when he goes and addresses the nation, he says there's a criminal syndicate that's sabotaging Eskom. I'm like, well,
it's called the ANC. It's called the ANC. That's a criminal syndicate. Hey, look it. I'll be Adam Schiff. I have the evidence. I have the proof. It's the ANC. Except I'll produce it. That's the difference. Yeah. Schiff.
Well, you don't even have to produce the proof. Every
just
South
look
African
around
with
you.
eyes to see can see it.
Wait, let me turn the light on. Oops, there's no mains. Speaking
of
which,
but the ANC loved this rhetoric.
Sorry, did you see?
Story.
I got to stop you. Did you see?
Yeah.
Ramaphosa comes, and we've restored and we're bringing back, and we've just brought this many megawatts on, and the crisis is over for now. And the Creel station, 4 units go down, and 2,000 megawatts go offline. While he's talking, because of fog.
Oh yeah. There are 3 things that are certain in this life, Chris. It's death, taxes, and Eskom losing the fight against weather.
Fog! I've never... Now, look, okay, Arctic's not here today. He's an aviator. I get when planes can't fly because of fog. You know, it's dangerous to land. But when do power generators shut down? Big industrial things generating steam from coal-fired power plants or nuclear-fired power plants.
In the 21st century.
In the 21st century. Oh, my goodness. Anyway, sorry. Go back to what you were saying.
Yeah, well, when it's not fog, it's rain. And when it's not rain, it's clouds.
It's wet coal. It's wet coal.
Yeah. But yeah, no, the ANC, Chris, what I would say earlier is that the ANC love a narrative of there's some third force. There's some dastardly third force. It's not the ANC. It's not someone with
white monopoly capital.
Yeah, it's white monopoly capital, or it's the American, American imperialism that destroyed Venezuela.
It's Burmag. It's the Burmag. We got them all in jail, but they're still behind it.
Yeah, or they're saying it's the sanctions that destroyed Zimbabwe.
Oh,
it's like,
what sanctions?
They always have this outside force, this very part, and now with ESCOM, there's this saboteurs, this criminal syndicate of saboteurs. Like and with the July riots as well, like there's a team of masterminds. They're not within the ANC. They're just this external team that we can't name them. We can't say what motivated them. We just need you to understand it's not the ANC that caused this. It's actually this dastardly other third force. And they love this narrative, and they always push it out. They always come out with this story. But unfortunately for them, people aren't buying it anymore. People are looking at it just laughing at it. I mean, when Cyril Ramaphosa, I mean, we both joked about the ANC being the criminal syndicate, but when Ramaphosa tweeted it out, everyone in the replies was saying the same thing. It's like, it's you. Just look in the mirror and you'll see the mastermind behind the destruction and sabotage of ESCOM.
Well, I think that for Christmas, I'll be buying Cyril Ramaphosa a vanity mirror, a full-length vanity mirror, so he can look at the criminal syndicate. Looking for the criminal syndicate? Here, look at this. Good Lord. Well, look, we've got a few more minutes before you have to rush off because you got a broadcast tonight, folks. Hey, don't forget that you can head over to the Conscious Caracal. I think it's 7 is when your broadcast starts, correct?
Yeah, it's 7. Okay. And half an hour after we're done, I'm going to be live on my channel, actually speaking to an American about some of his writing.
Okay, that sounds interesting. But let's take a few minutes away from the report, which we've talked about pretty extensively here, just to talk about Cyril Ramaphosa yesterday. So I don't know if that guy understands what it means to be president of a country. But the lecture that we got, the uninformed lecture from a person who knows nothing about power generation or the energy sector, was really sleep-inducing and not particularly helpful because we could have got that from an apparatchik. Why is the president of the country coming out? He should have come out and said, listen, ESCOM's a mess. We got some proposals. We're going to come up with some new legislation. We're going to consult former experts.
Here's the timeline. Short-term, medium-term, long-term.
50 minutes of narcolepsy-inducing nonsense. But here's a few things that came out of it. We consulted past plant managers, which leads me to the conclusion, without even going any further, that your current plant managers are inept and useless, and you had to go back to the old ones. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, Chris. When it comes to the president, I mean, he has a lot of qualities that he shares with your own president, President Biden. I mean, the man loves a teleprompter. He's like a Ron Burgundy. He'll read anything you put on there.
Except Ron Burgundy is at least entertaining, you know. And Joe Biden's entertaining. By the way, do you know what Joe's tell is? Do you know what? Every time Joe Biden lies, you know what he does?
Yeah.
He always puts that finger right there and starts rubbing the side of his nose. Not the top, the side. He rubs the side. Right there on the side. Yeah, so he's probably got, that very thin skin right there, almost to the bone, because he's always rubbing it.
But yeah, Chris, I think you probably discussed this on your show before, but the other brilliant big brain idea from Ramaphosa and the ANC is to build ESCOM 2. You're just going to build it.
Yeah, so hold on, I got to do this. Okay, so we've consulted our experts, and given that the state-owned utility has failed, we've decided that the best way to go forward. There was an op-ed from somebody, I missed it, was hilarious, and they wrote basically a satirical thing. He said, so in the halls of, they're in the bowels of not playing cards in the Lutuli house, and Ramaphosa's up there and he stands up and he's got a whiteboard. Idea is to save ESCOM, or just to save the energy sector, and the whiteboard's blank. So somebody, after a long pause, says, how about we come up with, let somebody compete with ESCOM? And everyone in the room's like, no. And then there's a long pause, and he goes, well, what if the state owned that too? Oh, yeah, that's a good idea. because that's worked so
ANC
well.
thinking, it's ANC thinking in full flight. I mean, it's the perfect representation of how the ANC approaches problem solving.
Well, you got to worry about their commitments to the climate. They got climate commitments, and so they blackmailed Europe and the U.S. into giving them $13.7 billion.
I'm surprised they haven't rebranded. I'm surprised they haven't rebranded load shedding as carbon shedding.
Well, I already warned South Africans, and I was the first to warn you. I mentioned it 2 years ago, but I've mentioned it seriously this week. It will come a time late this year or early next year when the African National Congress will impose a human carbon dioxide tax on every South African, because you're all carbon criminals. You inhale atmosphere, you strip out the oxygen for your bloodstream, and then you exhale carbon dioxide. You are a criminal. And there's going to be 100 Rand per month per South African fee for that. And it'll be taken directly out of your SASSA grant.
And and where's that going to end up? Right in the pockets of the ANC cadres.
Exactly right. Yeah, you guys got me saying cadres now. It's but cadres now. Cadres.
It's the right way. It's the only way.
It's the messed up way. It's a French word, cadre. No, but seriously, no. It's unbelievable. I'm going to do a short here in a little bit about all the key points that Ramaphosa brought up, like local content. So this isn't going to work. This whole concept he's come up with. He mentioned 80 private projects. Didn't name a single one that's going to deliver 6,000 megawatts of electricity. He also got the figure wrong. South Africa has 46,000 megawatts. Nope, it has 52,000 installed megawatts of electrical generation power. And on a given day, best case, it gets 32,000 megawatts. That's ridiculous. That's barely 60%.
Yeah. No, when it comes to Ramaphosa, Chris, I think there's only one other world leader that has a more sophisticated PR machine, and that's your own president, President Joe Biden. That just is there. When he stumbles, they pick him up. When he says something wrong, they clarify. They're there to just polish his image at every turn. I mean, the best example for me was where this was on full display was when Cyril Ramaphosa denied that farm murders were happening. And Peter de Tooy from News 24 wrote what the president actually meant. I'm like, there's no way to twist what he said.
Yeah.
He said what he said in 2 or 3 sentences. There's no nuance. He just denied it flat out. There's no way to look at it differently.
To be fair, you're correct in that one. But to be fair to Joe Biden, when Joe Biden stands up in an empty lot in New Jersey and says, it's the oil companies, that's why I and so many other people have cancer. I think Joe just forgot where he was at. Joe doesn't have cancer. He has Rona, but he doesn't have cancer. But Joe Biden told the world he had cancer a couple days ago. It's like, what the? He didn't say, when I had cancer, he says, I have cancer. He says, that's the reason I and so many people I know have cancer.
But he doesn't.
No, he doesn't have it. He also doesn't have brain cells, but, we can't account for that. It's just, Ramaphosa said what he said, and he meant it because he was trying to lie to people. He thought that, see, this is the thing. This guy has no idea what it means to be a leader. All these people with their Ramaphoria. Oh, stop. This guy is not a brilliant businessman. He was handed hundreds of millions of dollars in equity and did nothing with it. Just lived high off the hog and gained weight and lived in luxury. He's responsible. He was the deputy president under Zuma. He's responsible so much of the state. Capture nonsense that took place and not doing anything about it. It's just stop. This is ridiculous. People trying to prop him up. He's a buffoon. He can't talk without a teleprompter. And his sole attribute is he talks to you as if he's a grandparent talking to a child, trying to teach them how to tie their shoelaces.
Platitudes.
Yeah, it is. There's nothing to it. No substance. He's an empty vessel. He's an empty vessel. Put in whatever you want.
But there's so many. Now that I think about it, there's actually so many similarities between Biden and Ramaphosa. He also doesn't take questions ever.
Yeah.
I've never seen Ramaphosa answer a single question from the media. I mean, if someone can direct me to where there's an example of him taking questions, it's not even hard questions, just questions. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely something else. But back to my point about this whole thing. I mean, that's not something a president does. I mean, you come on and talk for 50 minutes about the nonsense. Look, Donald Trump can get up there and talk for 3 hours nonsense, but at least it's interesting, and he talks about some real content in the midst of it. Ramaphosa just got up for 50 minutes, and all he did was give me ammunition to attack the ANC. That's all he did. That's all he accomplished.
Yeah, no, I think his biggest strength is this false reputation of him being this strategic genius that's been built up for him by his PR machine over years. And a lot of people still believe it, a dwindling amount, but a lot of people still think this guy's playing 5D chess. Don't worry about it. Just trust the plan. Just trust Ramaphosa. He's got a long-term plan. Everything's going to work out. All the little pieces are moving on his chessboard. He's really going to put his opponents in checkmate now. But meanwhile, he's just they're playing chess and he thinks he's playing checkers.
Well, and we're seeing it already. You're going to head out here in just a second, but I've already raised the topic, and just to make people think about it. A lot of people have been talking about Cape secession for a couple of years. Is it time to talk seriously about KwaZulu-Natal secession? I mean, the ANC has imploded in KwaZulu-Natal. The 2021 November election, they lost control of municipalities. The IFP, who only gained 2% more voters, it only has about 630,000 voters total in the country, in KwaZulu-Natal went from 11 municipalities that they controlled outright or in coalitions to 30. ANC has imploded. And now what's left of the ANC in KwaZulu-Natal is split in half. We saw it 900 votes to 600 when Sile Zikalala was ousted. So it's about a 2/3, 1/3. So the ANC is split and fractured inside of KwaZulu-Natal. Are we seeing the future of South Africa? Maybe, but maybe it's time to start talking about, get people thinking about what's going on in KwaZulu-Natal, because it's quite serious. If the ANC thinks that they've got a cakewalk or they're going to survive, they need to look no further than what's happening in KwaZulu-Natal. And a lot of people say, well, that's because of Zuma. Yeah, maybe it is, and the radical economic transformation, but the same thing is happening in other parts of the country. Now, in Limpopo and Mpumalanga, those strongholds, nothing is changing there. In Northwest, where failure.
But yeah, KwaZulu-Natal is the province to watch.
It is the province to watch. Listen, Ronaldo's here. Hey, Ronaldo, welcome for popping in. Appreciate you showing up.
Better late than never.
Yeah, well, he gets credit for showing up. So, but Ronaldo sent a lot of folks my way yesterday, so I'm grateful for that. So bye, thank you, Ronaldo. Helped grow the channel a little bit. I was trying desperately to have more subscribers than Ernst today, so I could show off. But I didn't make it. I'm still short because you gained more subscribers. No, but seriously, listen. Early in the chat, a couple of people said this. I'm not going to put you in a spot. You don't have to commit to this because you're busy, as am I. But, I've got segments. I have Fireside with the Colonels with Vine Dutoya. It's a fortnightly thing, but we don't always do it fortnightly. And then I have Kenako, the Call of Africa with Koketso Retsani, Duma Denga, and guest. And then I also have Answer the Question with Rob Hutchison. People seem to enjoy us chatting and talking about these issues in South Africa. What I propose, and you don't have to answer it here because I'm not going to put you in spot, is that maybe we come up with a segment on this channel, and if you want to do one on your channel, where the two of us get together and talk about topics. And it can be about Africa, it can be about the U.S., it can be about South Africa. Just an idea. Think about it. I think it's a good idea. We could do it, fortnightly or once a month or something like that, just where people see us together, because I agree with them. I enjoy the conversation with you, and a lot comes out from both of us. So just think about it.
Yeah, Chris, we can definitely talk about it. And I'm always, like I said, you were talking about what people were saying in the chat, and I have to say, I always get the warmest of welcomes when I come on your show. It's very nice to come chat to you, but specifically also just because of the not only funny comments, but also very humbling comments from your audience as well.
Well, Ronaldo has just taken slight offense. He said, also no mention of Wednesdays with the Colonel. Okay, Ronaldo, I said segments on my channel, and then I offered to do one on his channel. Yes, Wednesdays with the Colonel is on Ronaldo's host program. He kindly invites me on as a co-host there, but he's always stealing the show. No, I'm just kidding. No, but Ronaldo, we do Wednesdays with the Colonel, and that's the longest running one. Wednesdays with the Colonel predates any of my special segments. We've been doing that now, Ronaldo and I, for 18 months. That's crazy how long we've been doing that. I know it was a joke, Ronaldo. My feelings weren't hurt. We're just having fun with you, man. Anyway, so we're not going to piss you off like Scott. Anyway, no. Anyway, so you've got to go. It's almost time. So this publication is available in PDF. The link is below the video if people want to go. The AfriForum server is there to show you where to go to it. And then you can actually download the Adobe Acrobat format for it, the PDF, portable document format. Will it be published in hard copy or paperback somewhere where people can get it? Because, a lot of us old toppies like the tactile experience of touching things, and we don't want to sit there and print it out on our printers. So is that a possibility?
When you visit the AfriForum offices, I'll give you a nice copy of it.
Well, great for me, but I'm not the only old toppies.
At the moment, we're not going to be giving it away at the AfriForum offices to anyone that shows up. I wish we could, but I mean, it's expensive to print all of these very well. I have to give credit to the design team at AfriForum as well. They did an excellent job, just nice and streamlining it, the cover and everything. But yeah, Chris, thank you very much for inviting me on to chat about it. And if people want to go read up on what we were talking about, There's all the links in the description. And then also I'm doing a video series on my channel where I'm turning the report into video format. So you can listen along to me reading the report. So that's on my channel, and there's a link to my channel as well. You were kind enough to put in the description. So yeah, when it comes to the reports, I'd love for people to share it. If you find it interesting and useful, share it with as many people as you can. You don't even have to just share it with influential people. Just share it with people that will find it interesting, or people that need to see it. I really appreciate that, and that's what this report is for. It's the World Must Know report. So tell the world, show the world. And I'll see you guys then in 30 minutes on my channel at 7 o'clock CAT, where I'm going to be chatting to the Prudentialist about community and the topics of community, place, and what it means to be home.
All right. Well, I one question before you go. Got to get this, and it's 26 minutes now, 25 minutes. So one question I think is just burning in everybody's mind. All right. So you have a caracal painted on your wall or etched on your wall up there. It's a lovely job. And someone mentioned earlier, it's nice to see the rooikat up there, which of course is Afrikaans for caracal, yes?
Yes, yeah, rooikat.
Okay. Yeah, rooikat, and it's also the name of an armored vehicle that was used in the Bush War, but the rooikat, so now here's the question. And no pun intended. Was it a conscious decision to come up with the English conscious caracal rather than whatever conscious means in Afrikaans and rooikat?
In Afrikaans, so conscious caracal bewuste rooikat wees. So
that
it
sounds
would be
like
bewuste
that
rooikat.
sounds like an informed. Wissen and bewusst is that's just like German. So okay.
Conscious is bewust.
Okay.
Bewuste.
Okay, so bewuste.
Consciousness is bewustzijn.
Okay, so did you go with the English to hopefully appeal to a broader audience, or because I mean, not many people know what a caracal is?
There's actually a story connected to that. So when people ask me like, what was your plan? How did you? Were you always planning on becoming like a YouTube channel with thousands of subscribers? I'm like, if that was the plan, I would have chosen a name that's easier to spell.
or a cat that people are more familiar with, like a lion or a leopard.
No, for me, it's one of my nicknames is rooikat. So I just translate, because I have a red beard. I've red in my beard.
That's why.
So then I just turned it into caracal, and I'm a sucker for alliteration, so I turned it into conscious caracal. And but it was a name I didn't put a lot of thought into. I thought it up in like 5 minutes because I just needed a name for my channel at that moment.
Well, it's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. Now Ronaldo's saying the easy joke would have been bewusstloze rooikat. That's not nice. Anyway, Ernst van Zyl, thank you very much. Good luck on your stream tonight. Appreciate you being on. I'll let you drop off. The Conscious Caracal, folks. Cheers. Well, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Ernst van Zyl, the Conscious Caracal here on the channel. We see Ronaldo's made a pop in. Thank you for that. I don't know what somebody was saying about Scott. I wasn't saying something bad about Scott. I was just mentioning that we weren't picking on Ronaldo. So thanks, folks. Thanks a lot. 2 broadcasts today. The earlier one was with Senator Doug Mastriano, the Republican candidate for governor here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. You can watch that. I think you'll find it very informative. It's not particularly long. It's only about 43 minutes, so feel free to go watch that. And thank you for tuning to this one here. And we'll see if Ernst is up for the concept of doing a regular segment there. That would be interesting on the program. We'll see if we can get it to happen. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, once again, don't forget that I will be in South Africa next month, assuming that things go the way they're supposed to. And this is an update of where I will be traveling. I'm still confirming things. I'm waiting to hear back from Steve Hofmeyer. There's a potential for a number of things. There'll be meet and greets all over the country, but these are the windows: Uppington, 19 to 21 August, Gauteng, but it's not just Gauteng, it's Northwest, the Free State, and KZN, but that's just where I'm flying to. So Gauteng and those other areas, the 21st of August to the 3rd of September, and then the Western Cape from the 3rd to the 13th. If I get to Nelson Mandela Bay, which is a plan, that will be in that window from the 3rd to the 13th. Stay tuned for more updates. This will be available. We have WhatsApp group and a Telegram group if you'd like to keep up and coordinate if you have offers of anything, a combination or a person I should interview or a place I should go. That will be available. Hit that like button, folks. 87 likes. Come on.
That was easy.
We had 100 people here a short while ago, and we didn't get 100 likes. Come on. Anyway, so these are the confirmed dates. On the 20th of August at 6 p.m. in Uppington at Campfire Stories, Come Fur. And then OR Tambo will have a meet and greet on the 21st of August when I return from the Northern Cape. At Cape Town, I'll be at DHL Stadium for the Sevens World Cup. And Somerset West on the 12th of September, who is winning the Ukraine Ukraine-Russia conflict. That's a location and time to be determined. So there you go. No, we're not doing a meet and greet in the Central Business District of Pretoria, although I've been there dozens of times. Yeah, that's right. I braved the Central Business District of Pretoria. These days, I'm not so sure if it's a good idea. JFOM gave a super chat in the last stream, and my apologies for not getting to it, hoping for investigation, actual January 6th investigation. So thank you for that super chat in the previous one. I do appreciate that. Anyway, so there you go. Folks, is there night owls? Paulie, it's Tuesday. I probably will do a night owls because there's some news to talk about. I'll set it up here in a little bit. That gives me 2 hours to the night owls, so we'll do it. So there'll be a night owls today. We'll do one. Okay, folks. There's some new viewers or some returning viewers or viewers that haven't been here in ages. So Fiona says, thanks so much for you and Ernst for fascinating, most informative live stream. Well, thank you, Fiona. I'd like to think that most of my live streams, particularly my interviews, are fascinating. You know, it's interesting because I get criticized occasionally by some viewers, a handful of viewers, who say Chris talks too much. But that's not an interview. That's the Indaba Conversation with Chris. So it's an exchange of ideas. It's an interaction. It's, you know, I don't really care for interviews. Senator, you are using Gab. Why are you using Gab? Yeah, that's you can get that from the news. This is something different. It's the Indaba Conversation with Chris, a la David Frost interviewing people back in the 1970s, which was pretty cool. I like that interaction. So yeah, it's the Indaba Conversation with Chris, and I hope that you enjoy and appreciate that. Fiona says, I always enjoy your live streams. Well, thank you, Fiona. I know we didn't see you for a long time, so it's great to see you here. Oh, and you became a member, Fiona. Did I miss that? Oh, let me give you a salute, Fiona. There you go. Members get salutes. I think I saw it at the beginning of a live stream. It didn't show up because you did it when we weren't live, if I'm not mistaken. Thank you for becoming a member, Fiona. Really appreciate that. Charles says, nothing wrong with that, especially if it's informative and entertaining. Exactly. Yeah, it's conversation, not an interview. Thank you, Hendo. Yeah, but I get criticized sometimes. Chris is talking too much. On occasion, I will do that. I'll confess to that. I will confess to that. But very little that comes out of my mouth you will find boring or not informative or entertaining. So I will boast about that. Anyway. Matthew says, insinuating that Pretoria Central Business District is racist. It may very well be, Matthew. It may very well be racist. No, it's not. It's not. I didn't talk about who is or isn't in the Central Business District, but I've been to Central Business District many times, and I've been by the statue there in the park that they're trying to remove, and they've vandalized. Yep. You're welcome for the salute. Well, thank you, Fiona, and hopefully you can bring some other folks here. I'm not trying to poach viewers from anyone else, but as I understand it, you and a number of folks from Scott Balson's Loving Life have come over because of his health issues. He can't broadcast all the time, so you tuned into my program. So thank you for that. But feel free to invite other folks to come over too. I'm not sure whoever started the fake argument between Scott and I didn't have an argument or started the nonsense, but I don't know what it was all about. But anyway. It certainly wasn't something that I precipitated. So anyway, but you're all welcome here. Anyone is welcome in my broadcast and in my stream as long as they're not trolls. We tolerate Matthew Dixon just because he can't help himself. He's a fun troll. But as long as you're not trolling and you're not a bigot racist and say offensive things, you're welcome to be in the program, and we welcome all. Muslim, Christian, Jew, Buddhist, Hindu, we don't care. Indian, colored, white, black, Zulu, Xhosa, Venda, we don't care. But if you're in the ANC, we might be skeptical. Fiona says, I've already done some recruiting. Well, thank you there, Fiona. I've noticed a slight uptick in my daily numbers, which has been helpful. So you open a door you can't close. Oh, what did Hendo say? Just not the Kung Flu. Yeah, Nick, I just saw that. No, I'm not going to do that. That's fun time. That's not for a serious when we've had an interview on here. But folks, so I'm going to make a short about the ESCOM, the Creel. I'm also going to make a short here with a few key points about what Cyril Ramaphosa said yesterday that should frighten you, should concern you. These are points he talked about. I'm going to put them together, things he said during his speech on electricity in South Africa, and hopefully you'll find that interesting. So please go watch it. No EFF KFC viewers. Yeah. Hi, Chris. Durban. What about Durban, Corey? Are you asking if I'm going to be in Durban, Corey? Corey Zeef. Is that really your name? Is that a surname, Zeef? That's interesting. Yes, you probably didn't hear what I said. That window that I'm talking about is 21 to 3 September. 21 to 3 September will be me traveling throughout Gauteng, Northwest, Free State, and KZN. We'll be in Durban. And I have a video here at the end, so please hang around. For those of you unfamiliar with it, I'll show it as we go off the air, and it'll show you the places I intend to visit at a minimum, and we'll see how it goes. Yeah, I plan to be down there, Corey. That's the plan. Peter Maritzburg, Amazimtoti, Durban. My intent in Durban is to do meet and greets with viewers, and also maybe go back to Ushaku, and I'll go to Wyatt Street. Yeah, there's a Wyatt Street in Durban. For those who don't know it, I'm going to go to Wyatt Street, where the British Military Museum is at. And then I will also be touring the battlefields at Spienkop, Blood River, Isan Lawana, and Rorke's Drift once again. Yeah. What's y'all's thought on ULM? ULM. United Liberty Management? What is ULM? What is ULM? So, yeah, I don't know what that... Help me out. There's lots of acronyms. So, anyway, but I just created a fictional character, Horace Zamamona, instead of Cyril Ramaphosa. Horace Zamamona. I hope you guys like that. I wrote it down because it came to me. I'm not familiar with James Myberg. I'll have to check into that guy who's the guest on the Conscious Caracal. And I think that Ronaldo's also got a show on today, if I'm not mistaken. Let me double check and see if that's the case. Let's check on the YouTube here real quick. And by the way, Ronaldo, if you're still here, yeah, he's scheduled for 1 o'clock as well. So you can catch Ronaldo at 1 o'clock if you want to catch Ronaldo. Yesterday, Ronaldo, if you're still here, he might have dropped off to prepare for a show. When you were live, it didn't show you were live, and it didn't put you on my feed for YouTube, even though I'm subscribed and all notifications. Later, about an hour into your broadcast, it did show that you were live. Anyway, United Liberation Movement, I have no idea what that means. Yeah, the Four-Tracker Monument, yes, the Paul, the Tal Monument, there's other places I'll go. Hermanus, Franschhoek, Somerset West, Simonstown, Stellenbosch, yeah, all those places. Parle, I'm going to all those places. Yep. Oh, UIM. Oh, you're talking about the political party. Don't have any thoughts on it. You talking about Neil de Beer's party? Is that who you're talking about, Peter? I don't really have any thoughts on it. I haven't really seen anything that they've been able to accomplish since they've been in office. I have no negative or positive feelings. I have given them a lot of coverage. We've had Fatima Abdul. We've had Neil de Beer on the program. Yep. So we've also had other candidates from that party on here. So, yeah. No, I don't have a view positive or negative. I do know that that Neil de Beer has been a guest on my program. He's recovering now in hospital. It's not gone particularly well for him. It's a shame to hear that. But you can go back and watch my election coverage, which I think is the best out there. No other content creator and no media outlet in South Africa put the kind of time, effort, and devotion into what I tried to do during the election for municipal elections in 2021. From August to November, I had constant parade and cavalcade of guests from 8 or 9 different political parties in South Africa who came on the program, candidates for office and leaders of those parties, had them on to be on here and share what their thoughts were, their interest in why they're running for office and that sort of thing, and party strategy. So, yeah, I had a lot of coverage on it, and it was interesting. Yeah, so, Peter, I don't have an opinion, positive or negative, and that's not a cop-out. That's just a statement. I mean, I have no objections. I mean, Neil de Beer, a lot of people question his legitimacy because he's changed, like a chameleon changes colors, and that's your prerogative. I'm not speaking for or against Neil. You have to judge Neil on your own merit or your own analysis. So that's where I leave that at. Fatima Abdul, she's a rock star, former soapy star. I really like Fatima. She's a lovely lady. She's traveling around the country with Conal Lagenberg. And I wrote to her today because she sent me a note. She thought that I was in South Africa now. I said, no, I'm not. And I asked her, why is everybody flogging Conal Lagenberg? I mean, he must be really interesting. So that's what I wrote to her. But so that's kind of where I am on the UIM. Yeah, UIM. Yeah. So anyway, I hope that helps you. Chris, you'll enjoy interviewing Sherilyn Dudley. Yeah, I interviewed her husband, Demi Dudley, when he was running for office. So that was interesting. And Fiona's out here. I think we're all out here. We didn't quite get to 100 likes, though. Monica Devereaux says, Chris, thank you for a very informative chat with Ernst. Really enjoyed it. Well, thank you, Monica. Not Monica. Monique. Excuse me. Monique. Love your avatar. That's a nice avatar there. Thank you, Monique. My apologies for saying Monica. Monique Devereaux. Thank you very much for that. Anyway, folks, if we could push up the like button. If there's anybody left here, the 59 people that hasn't hit the like button.
That was easy.
Make it happen. Make it rain. Well, there's one more. Let's get to 100 and appreciate that. And thank you very much to my guest, Ernst van Zyl. I'll put a few shorts out today And also, don't forget Rugby Ascendant. I put a couple shorts out there yesterday. One about Lucanio Am, an article in Rugby Pass, and the other about the All Blacks losing their minds and sacking 2 coaches, as if that's going to arrest their decline. Anyway, folks, thank you very much. Don't leave yet. Here's the video. This will give you an idea where I intend to go in South Africa, and I hope that you find this interesting. Make sure I got the right one here. There it is. There's the video. Okay, here you go. Cheers, everybody. Thanks. Hey, Jacques. Check it out later on. Yeah, appreciate that. And watch anything, my shorts especially. Please watch my shorts. Not the ones I'm wearing, my video shorts.